Hi, I'm Rocket with Wreckless Blenders, and welcome to another Musings from Rocket Cellar. In today's session, I'm going to talk a little bit about a number of things. One of them is going to be our upcoming releases and some timing around those releases. Got some exciting stuff on the horizon. I think you're going to enjoy it. I'll also talk a little bit about the Fianno label. I'm going to give you an update on where that's at. I've just placed the order. I'm not going to go through the long, lengthy how I got to where I got to, but I will show you the two versions of the label that are going to be available, and they're going to be available as posters. So I think they're going to be pretty cool. And finally, I will also be talking about some winemaking techniques that we use and some that we don't use and why. When do we use certain things and when do we not use certain things? So let's get started. So I wanted to talk about the Fianno label. So I did a couple of sessions about the Fianno label, and I thought it was very, very interesting going through that process personally and talking about all the different changes I'd go through and slowing down a little bit to check in with myself and find out what I was doing. And I ended up with a couple of the labels. The watercolor label only changed a little bit, and the City of Hope's label changed a lot. Again, it went through a whole nother set of variations. But one of the things that actually set off the series of changes is the bottle format is such that I have a different dimension for the label. And all of a sudden I had to make some choices about what I included and what I didn't include. So normally our labels are 3 inches wide by 5 inches tall. And the white and rosé bottles only allow for 3 1/4 inch tall, and I went ahead and went 3 1/4 inch wide. I'm sorry, 3 3/4 of an inch tall and 3 3/4 of an inch wide. And what happened when I did that is I went through a process of looking at the art again and thinking, how can I embrace the more widescreen format, if you will? Or actually, it's a square format, but it gave me some more width. And so I ended up coming up with these two labels. So this one is, I call this the watercolor label, and this is going to be the majority of the label. I think this is very classy. It has a lot of interesting colors to it. I mean, look at the blue in the middle. Look just how your eye is drawn to that. I think I found the perfect font to represent the Fianno-ness to that, with that big F and that really beautiful scroll to it. And it's a very iconic location in Italy. And I thought this is perfect for the Fianno. Then as I started working again on the City of Hope's label, I went through a whole bunch of different variations. I'm not going to take you through those variations again, but I ended up with this label. Now there's a couple of interesting things about this. One is where I put the Fianno. So I had some fun incorporating the Fianno as part of the windows. That was a little bit of a fun stuff. I used to have the Fianno at the bottom, and yeah, that was okay, but this really needed to have something stand out differently when I ended up with this widescreen format. And then I added, of course, the 2020 up at the top in the second tower. The color scheme changed quite a bit. So the first one, the final from the first round of all these major changes had this look to it. See that blue and the beautiful yellow highlights and the stylisticness. And then you switch back to this and you see it's more yellows and warmer tones and oranges. And I felt like this was a better look in the end for what I wanted to capture. And so put the order in. Now I've got a couple of posters, one of each of these, that are going to be available in the upcoming curbside events. Now, some of the things that are coming up in the near future. So on the next, I don't want to make this too date dependent. All right, but I am going to give you some date-centered things because I want to make sure you understand when things are going to be available. So the first of our wines that are going to be available on March 27th, starting March 27th, so the next Carmichael curbside is March 27th, and then the following week is the Concord curbside. And that is when the rosé is going to be available. And we're gonna bottle the rosé and a handful of other things that we'll make available for tastings, as in the next week or so that we're gonna be bottling. Now, at one point, I told a whole bunch of people that the Fianno was going to be available at the next curbside, and it's my bad. Wine doesn't always do what we want it to do, and we must give it the space and time it needs to complete its process. And so it's probably going to be at the April curbside events the Fianno will be available. Now, one of the reasons that we went through this process and we let it sit longer. Now, okay, so I'm going to pivot over to some winemaking things. I'm not going to get all super technical on this, but I am going to give you just enough information so you understand what it is we do and what we don't do. And one of the things we don't do, and it would be a really, really big thing to do this, is filter our wines. Now, what does filtering mean? So essentially, think of it like a coffee filter. You take, the grounds go through this filter and the water and the mixture comes out, but not all that, not a huge amount of the sediment comes through. Now, filtering, there's a lot of wineries out there and it's their choice, they automatically filter everything. And part of it is to remove some of those particles that can be in the wine, the sediment that can be in any wine. And that's fine. But what we found is filtering changes the characteristics of the wine enough that we don't want to. We want to be more natural when it comes to making our wines. We want the grapes to tell us what to do with them. We don't want to necessarily try to bend the grapes to our will. And filtering is not necessarily bending the grapes to your will, but it's more about, it's a technique that we think should be used only if necessary. And so going forward, our wines are going to proudly say unfiltered on the back of the label. Of course, when they're unfiltered. Now, if we do filter something, we'll make a big deal about it, and I'll probably talk about it here and talk about why we filtered it, and if that ever comes up. But it's been, 30 some odd years as winemakers. We've been commercial, over 10 years, at least 12 years, and we haven't filtered our wines during at least the commercial side of it. If we did it before, it was a very much a one-off thing. It was because there was huge amounts of sediment or something along those lines. But it's not a technique. We went through the process to understand what the technique did to the wine, and we realized that that's not something we want to lead with. So filtering is not something you're going to see from us. Fining, on the other hand, is something you might see every so often. Rarely, but something you might see so often. And just as a spoiler alert, that's what we had to do to the Fianno. So we had to fine it. Now, that doesn't mean we gave it a parking ticket, right? What that means is, so fining is the process of, you put something in the wine, something natural, like egg whites, and I think we're using a potato-based fining system. And this goes down, and as it drops down the bottom of the barrel, it's glomming on to molecules and to bring things together to make them bigger. And usually those molecules that it's glomming onto are things that make the wine cloudy, all right, or harsh. And that's one reason to do fining, is to reduce some of that really, really harsh tannins. Now, there's tannins that are yummy, and they're bold, like our Sacramento, very, very tannic wine, and very, very bold. And it's not something we would want to go through a process and fine, right? Because we want those wild tannins to show up. Now, why did we fine the Fianno? Well, as we went through the process of making this white wine, we got to a point and the wine was still very cloudy. And we thought, let's take a small sample of this wine, like 3 gallons, and let's fine it and see what happens. And we were looking for two things. What did it look like? What was the visual impact of fining? And then secondly, what was the taste impact? Now there's been one or two times we find way back in the past, and it made, very much like filtering, it made an impact on the wine that we were not happy with. So the only time we need to reach for the fining tool is if we need the fining tool. We don't reach for it all the time. Now in this case, we went, okay, let's do an experiment. Let's take a small sample over here, and we're gonna leave the rest of it alone. And we did a taste off. And so a number of weeks ago when we were blending, we took the fine version and the unfined version. Now, normally we like to not tell people, not tell us which one is which. It was very clear which one was fined and which one was not. The fined one, very clear, much lighter in color. The unfined one had not a rust, but it was a darker color to it. It was a dark yellow color, and it was cloudy. And that's not a bad thing. So if wine is cloudy, that can be an okay thing. In this case, we weren't happy with it being super cloudy. But what we didn't want to do was all of a sudden make this a thing that we did just to make it pretty. Okay? We wanted to make sure that the taste followed the look. And so we went through this process, and it was hands down no contest. The fined version of the Fianno outshone the unfined by a lot. So we learned something. We said, all right, for that white wine in particular, that might not be a bad technique. Now, we're not going to find anything else unless we need to. So again, if you look on the back labels going forward, you will see unfined and unfiltered for wines that haven't either one of them, and you'll have unfiltered for like this Fianno. Now, why am I making a big deal about this? Well, in some cases, you're going to get a bottle of Wreckless Blenders home, and you're going to open it up, and you're going to start drinking it, and at the bottom, there's going to be a little bit of sediment. And you'd be like, well, what's up with that? Well, sediment is often the result of making natural wine. So you're going to get some sediment in there. And we do our best to rack off the sediment and make sure that the wine is clean. Now, you're probably asking yourself, you put egg whites or potatoes? It's a potato, yeah, don't worry about what it is. It's not, we don't put potatoes in the wine. It's a powdered substance that we put in to the barrel. And what happens is it goes down slowly over time, and it's picking up all these particles, and it's bringing all these things to the bottom of the barrel. Now what happens at the bottom of the barrel, it all collects right there. And then we stick a hose in, and we put that hose right above where that sediment is, and we suck all that wine out into a different barrel. And so we rack it. That's what racking is. It's moving wine from one barrel to another and leaving the sediment at the bottom of the barrel. Now, we're a small winery, so we want to make sure we use every little bit of wine we can. So what we'll do is actually take that rest of that sediment and put it into a small container and let it settle out. And usually what'll happen is you get this goop, let's say you got a 3 liter container, and you'll get a bunch of that is just goop, and then you get 1.5 liters of juice. And you can suck that off, and then you can use it as toppers. Turns out making sure the wine is topped is an incredibly important thing because you don't want the wine to oxidize. Now, let me just pause here and take a quick diversion over here and talk a little bit about that. So what happens is these are barrels, and barrels are porous, right? So they're made out of wood. And what will happen is they'll evaporate, so wine will evaporate. Now what winemakers call that is the angel's share, right? Now here's the thing. The more wine that evaporates, the more surface area is open for oxidation, for oxygen to get into. And you do that, and you run the risk of things not going well. So we end up making sure we have enough juice available to keep as little of surface area as possible open to the oxygen. Now, we're not begrudging the angel share. We're just wanting to make sure that our wine stays safe. Okay? So coming back to this Fianno and the fining. So it all goes down here, we pump it off, we go over here, we rack it, make sure it's clean. You know, we wait a few weeks and we test it. So this happened recently and we went and tested it and we looked at it and we said, it is not ready. And we would be doing a disservice to you and to the wine if we were to bottle it too soon. We really wanted to have it available this week, but we're probably going to give it another month. We don't want to feel rushed about it. And so we'll bottle sometime in mid to late April, and we'll let you know when that Fianno is available. We're really looking forward to it. We had a little sample of it out here recently, and my toes curled. I mean, it is so bright and beautiful and crisp, and it's just, somebody said between our rosé and the Fianno, it's like summer and spring in a bottle combined on a beautiful day. I thought that was a very, very apt description. So keep an eye out. We'll let you know when the Fianno is available. Another wine that we're making this year that we haven't for 6 years now is the Dayglow. Now, if you want to know the history of the Dayglow, I'll tell you another time. But just know this is an Italian blend. Now it's the normal vernacular for this is Super Tuscan. Now, Super Tuscan is usually like a Sangiovese, maybe a Barbera with a Merlot or a Cabernet Sauvignon or something along those lines. So it tends to be this semi-French Italian blend. Now what we said was, screw that. We don't want to follow any vernacular or nomenclatures around this. This is just it's not an actual appellation or anything like that. It's just what people call it. So we said, well, we're going to call ours an Ultra Tuscan because we might have some Portuguese grapes and we might have some, you know, whatever's in there. We didn't want to be constrained by convention. And so our Dayglow is usually this lovely, and it is this lovely, lovely Italian blend with some extra spice from different locations to round it out. And we came up with something we are so excited about this year. It was an unexpected blend because we do have the Wreckless Red, and that's a big one. You all have told us how much you enjoy that. Well, the Dayglow is one that when it's available, people go gaga over. So I think you're going to enjoy this one. I know I had, when we blended this, it was just beautiful. All right, closing comments for the Wine Club members. If you don't have your Wine Club code when you want to go shop online, send me an email, rocket@wrecklessblenders.com, and I will respond to you. Just say, hey, I need my Wine Club discount code, and I'll send that to you. And for those, and remember, you get 20% off of all wines if you use that discount club code on the website. For those of you who aren't Wine Club members, it's definitely worth checking out. There's no fees. There's no, the obligation is a couple of shipments and that's it. And you'll probably, if you like our wine, you're probably going to get both shipments on the first day. So but it's worth it because there's a limited number of spots. And when the spots run out, I can't add any more people to the Wine Club because we won't have enough to go around. So if you like our wines, it's definitely worth checking out. To check it out, you can go to the website, and on the website there is a link to Wine Clubs, and follow the link, and there's a place for you to enter your information, and that sends me a note, and then I get in touch. And the reason I do that instead of just signing right up is I need to make sure that there's enough people, that there's enough spots to be available. So I don't want you to think you're in the Wine Club if there's no spots available, right? That whole thing. But the Wine Club, very cool stuff. There's 3 plans. There's also a case shipment thing. I'm not going to go all into the details here because, it's not worth it right now. But you can always check it out. There is a video on the website that talks a little bit about what the different options are. Now, for those of you who aren't part of the Wine Club or don't want to be part of the Wine Club, that's perfectly cool. For this year, you can use Curbside 21, one word, when shopping online to get a 15% discount. And you can always do that, and we can ship to you, we can deliver to you, you can come to the winery and pick up. You can also pick up at the curbside events, and you can also purchase at the curbside events. We're happy that the curbside events, we now are going to have tastings. We're going to follow all the protocols when it comes to tastings, and that's a great thing. And I can't wait till when we have our first big event back together, and it will definitely be later in this year. It's not going to be anytime soon. So, but I can't. It's going to be wonderful. We're definitely looking forward to it. So with that, I'm Rocket with Wreckless Blenders, and this has been another Musings from Rocket Cellar.